Right, I'm going to do something quick about how to do citations and bibliographies and sources, because there's a lot of times I'm writing notes about it and people are clearly in need of some support. So this here's a reference here, a citation. And where you see that bit in parentheses, in brackets there, that's the citation. That's a citation to a text by a man called Yin. Here, this is a citation to another text, a journal article by people called Green and Caracelli. Here's one by a book by Creswell and Plana Clark. There's another citation there. And look, we've got another one here. So citations are all things that we see all the time. And it's the way in which academics refer to one another's work. I could read out the bit of work to you, I could quote it directly, I could tell you to read it, or I could include it in an appendix. But actually that's pointless, it wastes a lot of time. I don't want to have to read every citation that's ever given to me. But let's just say that somebody says something unusual or surprising about a piece of work. I might want to go check, I might want to put it back together and see if it really does work the way they said it did. So here's an example of where that is the case. In this footnote here I wrote, mixed methods is a research design, and then I put these little square brackets in, and this, that, and these dots and stuff. I'm going to explain all that in a minute too. Alright, so I did this quotation. So the first thing to note, quotations appear inside of quotation marks. I know it seems obvious, but if you don't put the quote marks around it, technically you're saying it's your words and not anybody else's. So if it does come from somebody else, quote it. If it's in the main body of your text, indent the quote from either side, so make it very clear this is not my work. And make sure it is immediately followed by this kind of citation. Conventionally, we always align it on the right, but I don't care about where it's aligned, I just want to make it really clear. This isn't my work, it's theirs. Okay? Second thing I want to make really clear is if I've made any changes to it, which is what the square brackets do. You might have seen that in text when you're looking at them. If I quote somebody else and I want to doctor what they said in an honest way, then I put square brackets where I've deleted stuff. And the little dots show the deletion, they're called ellipses. There's a bit missing, an ellipsis. If I add bits, like the word that, that's put inside the square brackets to show it's been added. So this usage here is a way in which we can honestly say, I slightly doctored the quote. And there are good reasons for doing that. In this case, when it said mixed methods, research is a design, and then there was a bunch of example stuff here, which I didn't need and nobody needed. So I just doctored it by cutting it out so that this was shorter and easier to read. Does that make sense? So that's what we did there. Now we get to the citation itself. Here, look. The citation, Creswell and Plano Clark, 2007, page number 5. If we go down to the list of sources down here, you can see Creswell J, Plano Clark, 2007. And then there's the title of their book, Designing and Conducting Mixed Methods Research. And the book was written in Thousand Oaks, California, and also in London, and published by the Sage Publishing House. So the way you do this bit is you give me the author names, then you give me the date of publication. You don't have to put them in brackets, I'm in a habit of doing so. A title, which should be indicated consistently, so I use italics to do titles. And then the place of publication, or places of publication, and then finally the publishing house. If these are a bit scrambled, I don't care, provided I've got very clearly who it was by and what it was about just there. That's going to make it a bunch easier for me to get a hold of the original source if I need to. Right, so that's how we do a book. And when we quote, we must always give a page number. Otherwise, I'm left wading through what might be hundreds of pages of books trying to find the original quote, and that's not fair. You sometimes see a citation without a page number, like this one here, Yin 2006. Now what that technically means is I was thinking of the whole of everything that Yin wrote in that article. So I go down to the article here, Yin 2006. The article was called Mixed Methods Research. Are the methods genuinely integrated or merely parallel? And it was published inside of a journal called Research in the Schools. So this here, this italicized bit, is Yin's title. The underlined bit is the title of the journal. This is the number of the volumes of the journal. So this is in the 13th volume of this journal, and it's in the first issue of that 13th volume. So this is issue number 1, volume number 13. Finally, here are the page numbers within the journal itself, 41 through to 47. So I think you can see that's a 6-page journal article dealing with a very specific topic, and that's why it's okay for me to cite the whole of it here. It's perfectly reasonable of me to say there are issues associated with this approach, in particular when synthesizing potentially contradictory and inconsistent data. See Yin 2000. I'm thinking of the whole of what the man said. If I'm not thinking of the whole of it, like I'm down here, where I'm only thinking of a tiny bit, I have to give the page number. So this here is Green and Caracelli, and they wrote another journal article, and you can see that down here. So here's Green and Caracelli. That's their author name. This et al. And others shouldn't really appear in a list of sources. That was a bit bad of me, really, but et al. Means and others, et alters. And that, so you should, in a source list, you should always give the whole. Et al. Can be used in citations. Data publication there. And then we've got the title, again in italics, to show what their article title was. Here, underlined, a journal title. And then finally, the volume and issue number, just here. Oops. And there's the pages. Okay, so you can see there, that was 55 to 274, it's 19 pages. I was not thinking of the whole of those 19 pages when I made the point here. In fact, I was only thinking of perhaps a paragraph or two that crossed over a page boundary. So you can see a citation tells me an awful lot without actually having to be very explicit about it. I can work stuff out. I can work out where it came from, how old it is, how much you're thinking of, is it the whole article, just a part of the article. You can see how this works. Quotations can be enormously useful as well, especially when you doctor them slightly to make them short or to emphasize certain points. However, if you do quote, you really, really need to say something about the quotation. I don't want to see any drive-by quotations, where you just dump it in the middle of the text and run away from it. If you're going to put somebody else's words in your work, you really ought to say something about them. Right, what else have we got to say? Green, Caracelli, Yin. Oh yes, yeah. If we go a bit further down here, this is another bit of practice that we sometimes have problems with. Moustakis explained something, and I thought that it was a valuable explanation. But I didn't read Moustakis. I read a book by somebody called Holloway, and they quoted Moustakis. And they said to me that Moustakis wrote this in 1994, right? And they said it on page 28 of their book. Now, I could cunningly pretend to have read Moustakis and just rob their citation, but that's very poor practice. If you're going to do that, make sure you get the original and check that the page numbers and the dates and everything do actually line up. If you're not, if you don't have time, or if you can't find the original source, it's okay to do this. It's just it does look a little more complicated, okay? So what I said was, Moustakis explains, and then I give the quotation. And then I give the citation that was given in Holloway, and I say, quoted in Holloway, and then I give Holloway's date and page number, so that when we come down to this thing here, there's the Holloway one there, which you can see is all done the same way. But there's no Moustakis. I'm not claiming to have read Moustakis because I never did, and it would be dishonest of me to make that claim. So that's how we do that, how we handle cite a source from within inside of another source. We just have to only talk about the sources we actually read. Last thing to look at then, how do we handle virtual sources? So this here is a quotation from this article here, okay? This was published by the BBC on the 7th of July 2014. So in my text, I've got the quotation there, and I've given a citation, BBC 2014. Now that clearly belongs in here. There's an unsealed chain, so B for BBC should come between. People have said, but it isn't written by the BBC, it's written by somebody at the BBC. But here on this article, I don't actually have a real person's author name. So I have to go with the corporate author, BBC. So my article citation would look like this. I'm going to take that bit there and copy it. It's going to go in here, so it's BBC, and then the date, which is 2014, And then the article title, I'm just going to amend that so it looks like all the other article titles I've got and match it up. That of course should be italicized because all of my other article titles are italicized and it shouldn't appear in bold. So BBC 2014, there's the title. Now in order to actually get back, I can't use a publishing house and location, but I can use a URL, which is this thing up here. So I'm just going to copy that, come back into here and paste it in there. And after that we ought to say something like accessed on the, and then today's date, which in this case is of course the 7th. Accessed on the 7th of July 2014. And that's how you do a virtual source. If you can't find a web author, if you can't find either a corporate author like BBC or an individual, don't use the source. It's probably not worth it. And think about the quality of the sources as well. Wikipedia is a very, very useful source of information, but anybody can edit any article. I write for Wikipedia occasionally, and I have been known on the past to edit inappropriately, particularly when I'm setting assignment work for my students and I want to check that they've actually read what I wrote. Don't trust Wikipedia in and of itself. Read it to get ideas about where to go. If you look on any Wikipedia article, I'll have a quick squint at one of those now. We'll use the article of the day, shall we? On any Wikipedia article, you would see that there's usually a list of references at the bottom. So I tell you what, let's look for Marxism. There we go. Right, that's a very, very valuable article, and most of what's in there is really solid and reliable. But somebody could get in there and edit it and make you look like an idiot if you quote the wrong thing. However, down the bottom here, you will see an awful lot of learned and valuable resources to much more stable sources that can't be edited. So here, look, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin's The Task of the Proletariat in the Present Revolution. So that's Marxist internet, you can't edit that so easily. If we look at these ones, these are going to be much more useful to us. And here, some of them are offline. So some of these things would be even more stable. So you might want to go to look at those. Wikipedia is a way in, it's not where you end. Similar with an awful lot of other sources, Business Balls, Simply Psychology, any of those are the handy-dandy how-to guides, great places to start, but don't finish there. All right, I think that's probably enough for right now. If you've got any questions or other queries, get in contact and we'll sort it out. But hopefully you've got the basics of it just there.